Welcome back to The Line. A state district judge recently ruled that New Mexico's Legislative Council Service must turn over most records regarding an internal Senate ethics investigation into former state Senator Phil Griego. Mr. Griego is facing criminal corruption charges over allegations he used his position as a legislator to financially benefit from the sale of a historic Santa Fe building. We all remember that. But still in question, however, is whether the Legislative Council can get the judge to nullify all subpoenas to legislators and legislative staff members, which could excuse them from having to testify at Mr. Griego's preliminary hearing in July. The council says forcing them to testify violates a part of the New Mexico Constitution that protects legislative process. Attorney General Hector Balderas disagrees, criticizing the maneuver, according to the Santa Fe New Mexican, by saying it sacrifices justice on the altar, Dede Feldman, of secrecy. That's an interesting term he's using there, that sacrificing. What is the sacrifice here, what he's talking about? Is something going to be permanently and irreparably harmed if folks are in fact subpoenaed and have to testify about this Griego thing? Is that going to upset the entire legislative process?
Only if you think that the legislature is sacrosanct
Gotcha.
in everything it does and must maintain its place in the balance of power.
Right.
I am not a believer that they should be using the what they call the speech and debate clause in the New Mexico Constitution.
Explain what that is real quick, if you would, in layman's terms.
Well, it says in the Constitution that lawmakers shall not be questioned in any other place for any speech or debate or vote cast in either house. Well, if you interpreted that literally, then senators and legislators wouldn't need to be responsive to their constituents to answer questions about voting, about issues, about what they said on the floor of either house, and that's not democracy. That's something else. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I think it's part of the reason why the approval of legislatures never rises above 25% or so. They should not be using this as a way to shield legislators from being accountable, and particularly obeying the law.
That's right. Mary Torres, it's interesting hearing Senator Feldman talking about this, because on one side you can understand that, as a legislator, especially with an ethics hearing, there are things said that you want to be able to talk about. You feel you're talking in confidence, but it turns out maybe you're not talking in confidence. That's not quite fair to some people, but on the other side of it, we've got this huge push for transparency right now in our state because of exactly what Senator Feldman just said. Where do we fall down in the middle on this?
Well, I think that it was a correct ruling by the judge, because he's looking at our New Mexico privilege laws, and the federal privilege follows the common law, where you think that you have executive privilege, et cetera, and that you can kind of speak candidly, et cetera, but New Mexico doesn't follow that. New Mexico has its own privilege rules, and we don't follow the common law. So we have privileges with husband and wife, et cetera, et cetera. So perhaps the legislators weren't aware of that, that kind of privilege, and they want to be able to speak candidly. But of course, if they're speaking candidly with their lawyer in the room, then all bets are off. That is a privileged conversation, because New Mexico clearly recognizes that. But again, you have your public, they are elected officials, they're responsible to the members of the public, and we've got to be transparent on that.
That's right. Andy, but I put this on the table again. It's not like any other kind of a hearing, it's an ethics hearing. It's a much different situation. How does that change the dynamics as you look at it in your reporting?
One thing that to keep in mind, I think a lot of this comes up because it's a citizen legislature. In 2013, it's a little bit different, but in 2013, they passed a resolution that basically tried to exempt them from records requests, because they said we work as a legislature as a whole, but we're all citizens. So I think some of that is they want to be protected because they are elected officials, but they're citizens. So it gets kind of tricky. But yeah, with the ethics part of it, I think in the terms of the hearing, I think that there is a lot of stuff that they probably should bring to the surface to see what kind of conversations were had about that.
Tom, not everybody get everything they want. Mr. Balderas is not going to get everything. Council Services is not going to get everything. Are you comfortable with where this is settling? We don't know what's going to come, but as it stands, some things are going to be protected. Some, we don't know what that is, and we shouldn't know, maybe, but some things are not going to be. Is this okay?
Yeah, I think so. And of course, I think we'll find out July 5th, the
Right.
first court hearing date, that to see what is really, how it's all going to unfold.
right.
You know, it's an interesting discussion because, you know, in addition, you know, I think that the conversations that legislators have with the Legislative Council Services, that's definitely a very important conversation, just as important as the conversations that take place in the caucus. Where, you know, different things are, I mean, you have a wide variety of things discussed. And, you know, are they really going to go into that whole discussion?
Because ostensibly
as well?
that's not for public purview.
Exactly. I mean,
in
there's,
those
you know, everybody
caucuses.
puts their hands out, you know, cards out on the table at that point. And so there is a fine line. And I think that, you know, there are certain conversations that are protected and then those that aren't. And the judge, Lovelace, I believe it is, has done a very good job, I think, of actually methodically going through the documents and saying, you know what, these are for the public discussion. However, these are clearly off limits. And I think that that kind of discretion is very important, especially when we're talking about stuff like this.
That's right. We're a little tight on time, Dee Dee, but interestingly, when I think about this, we don't know who was asked for privilege, so to speak. Mr. Balderas is asking, well, who doesn't want to come forward here? It's actually, without saying it directly, it's actually an interesting proposition. But, you know, the idea that Senator Jerry Ortiz-Pino has said, I'll testify, I got nothing, you know.
As
Senate
does
Majority, Michael Sanchez, I'll testify, it's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right way to go? If you were asked, it's like, what do I know? You know, I'll tell you what you want, but it's not going to help anything, I don't think.
Well, I find the whole discussion very ironic because Senator Griego, right before he resigned, put out in a stipulated agreement much of the information that we are talking about here, admitting that he broke the New Mexico Constitution. The real question in terms of the caucuses and what conversations should be shielded or not. And the judge, by the way, shielded the attorney-client privilege, not the legislative privilege. The real question is, what if one of the members of the body is breaking the law and you don't say anything about it? Is that certainly enabling law breaking? Is it aiding and abetting a crime? And should you remain silent as a policy? I think it all shows why we need an independent ethics commission rather than one which the legislature is doling out information or keeping some back.
Good job there. That's the bottom line, isn't it? We got to get to some body that can look at these things and take care of our business. Now, when we come back to the line, we'll talk about charter schools and the public education department.